I'd like to show you just one example today of the transformational impact that technology can have on financial crime mitigation. It's a story of a small team tackling a problem worth billions of pounds to our industry, and through the power of innovation, delivering some truly awesome results. I'm going to finish the session with some reflections that I hope you'll be able to take away to your own organisations. But as you'll see throughout the session, there are really three things that made this a successful innovation project. The first is a clear and achievable objective, high quality data, and some smart deployment of the right technologies. Just before we start, I just want to take a very quick flash survey. Put your hands up if you or your team have ever been involved in corporate ownership investigations. Well, that's UBO verification, investigation. Okay, quite a few, maybe about 50%. So who are Kyckr and why should you care what we have to say about beneficial ownership? Kyckr's vision is that every organisation should have an instant, accurate and ongoing view of the risks of transacting with another business. We heard Katerina say earlier that the world in 2023 is a complex and uncertain place to operate. Pretty scary. When onboarding new customers, we all face a range of risks that, if not properly managed, can lead to regulatory breaches, fines, crippling business costs. Our goal is to provide audit-proof business data that can be used to verify third parties instantly. That ensures regulatory compliance, reduced fraud risk, and quicker onboarding times. And today, that's built on a live network of over 300 corporate registry connections, instant, accurate business verification and original registry documents in minutes, and a set of proprietary software tools that we've built to support Know Your Business verification processes as part of the wider AML workflow. Okay, let's begin our story. I'd like to take you back about 18 months to one of Kyckr's regular product strategy workshops. And at the time, we were considering three areas to focus our R&D spend. One was the move in our industry towards event-driven KYC and the need to address the huge costs associated with periodic reviews in regulated entities. Another were the difficulties associated with extracting data from registry documents, especially in countries where it's not possible to access open, structured data. Fun fact for you, about 95% of the world's registry information is stored within PDF documents. It's a pretty big challenge. And finally, we had the challenge of identifying and verifying ultimate beneficial owners, UBOs. Now, as most of you will be aware, entities which are regulated under the AML Act have an obligation to identify and verify UBOs at the point of onboarding. But here's the challenge. Despite the efforts of many national governments to increase the transparency of corporate ownership, UBO data remains in pretty short supply. So on the one hand, you've got an obligation to verify UBOs using independent, reliable data. But where are you going to access that data from if it doesn't exist? Now, while all three were problems we wanted to work on, and in fact we still are, it was UBOs that our research was telling us was the right one to focus our attention. But why? Well, as you've heard already, it's a challenge based on data scarcity. Kyckr's core capabilities are around finding hard-to-reach primary source data and making it instantly accessible to customers. So this was a nice fit. Beyond great data, though, it also required great technology. It was a chance to experiment with some new technologies that we hadn't deployed before. Our engineering team loved new things. Our research was also telling us it was a huge, huge pain point for our customers. As part of this exercise, I personally interviewed around 30 of our customers in banking, legal, and payments. All of them at the time told us that verifying UBOs was their single biggest pain point. And lastly, and this point is crucial, in our belief, no vendor had cracked it. There was a white space there to do something truly innovative. Now, when embarking on an innovation project, it always pays to look at existing attempts to solve the problem, see where the gaps are. So I want to take you through three that the Kyckr team considered. And we'll start with the obvious to many of you in the room. Beneficial ownership registers. So in the EU, the fifth Anti-Money Laundering Directive, 5AMLD, required every member state to establish a beneficial ownership register, providing UBO declarations to parties with a legitimate interest. Now, initially that was full public access, but as we saw last year with the ECJ ruling, that's gradually been scaled back. So, problem solved, right? It's quick, you access the register, gather the information, download it, and you verify the details supplied by your customer. And you meet your regulatory obligations, somewhat. Now, in a number of jurisdictions, it's not enough to solely rely on these declarations, and given you only see the UBOs and not the structure in between, you risk missing out on information that could be valuable in preventing financial crime. Globally, as well, accessible UBO registers still incredibly rare. That's changing somewhat, but it's taking a lot of time. And we're seeing serious data quality issues in some jurisdictions. Self-declaration, limited verification, means these declarations can often have glaring inaccuracies. You also can't spot the red flags in the wider structure. And only beneficial owners that meet the FATF definition of 25% more ownership of shares or voting rights are included. Now, that's great if that's all you need, but if you're one of our many banking clients whose policy is to verify UBOs with 10% ownership or more, you're out of luck. So let's turn to a second option, which we thought was commercial data vendors. There are many companies out there, particularly local suppliers in countries, who will say they can provide you with UBO data. In some cases, this is sourced directly from companies themselves. In others, it's drawn from a range of different sources, some primary, some secondary. The good news is they are also very quick to access. However, most will give you limited guarantees around the provenance of the data, its freshness or coverage. Varies very wildly from vendor to vendor. And this can mean that there are data quality issues which risk your regulatory compliance, particularly as the AML Act, as I said at the start, requires you to use reliable and independent data. So we've talked about UBO registers, we've talked about other data suppliers. Let's finish off with what's another common method. That's manual verification. What do I mean by manual verification? Well, in short, this involves analysts or researchers investigating a company's shareholders and ownership structure to determine who the UBOs are, using whatever data they can find. And the good news is, this means it's pretty thorough. And if you're using good quality data, it's generally pretty accurate as well. And presuming you're using that verifiable independent data, it's also compliant. And the actual research process can uncover additional risk areas. You might find, for example, that a parent company in an ownership structure is based in a sanctioned country, or that a shareholder with a small holding is a pet needs to be investigated further. But you guessed it, there are some downsides. And the first is it is very, very slow. Our research has shown that this manual recursive process can take from a few hours on average to well over 30 hours of analyst time for particularly complex cases. Can you imagine that? 30 hours of research. All that time means an increased cost to the firm, along with a lengthened customer onboarding process. It also relies on you having access to accurate, reliable shareholder data. Now, in some cases, that might be easy to get hold of, but in countries with low transparency of ownership, such as offshore tax havens, it becomes much, much more difficult. For my many conversations with analysts over the last 18 months, I've found that often in order to succeed, they need to be part detective and part mathematician, mixture of Sherlock and Turing. Okay, so we know our three methods. Let's plot those out on a graph. We'll use a 2x2. You can take the guy out of consulting. Can't take the consulting out of the guy. Okay, so the two axes, we've got manual effort on the bottom here, ranging from very low effort to more high effort. And on the bottom, on the other axis, we've got data freshness and accuracy, ranging from very accurate at the top to less accurate at the bottom. Okay, so in most cases with beneficial ownership registers, the data will be pretty good, legally valid. Obviously, there are egregious cases where that's not the case. But it still involves some kind of manual work as well. You've got to log into the register, you've got to go through the paywall, download the document, manually extract it, and then use that to verify the information. So we'll put that maybe somewhere in the middle. Then we've got commercial data vendors. Now you could plot this all over depending on who the vendor is, but in lots of cases, there's going to be question marks around the data freshness, but very low manual effort. And finally, we've got manual verification. Certainly the most thorough method for determining accuracy, but it comes with a huge time outlay. So we looked at all of these, and we decided this is where we want to be. The most accurate data available, delivering verifications with the least amount of manual effort to KYC analysts, a challenge worth billions of pounds a year. And I think that's where we've got to with the product we've created. It's a product called UBO Verify. What is UBO Verify? UBO Verify is a software tool that automates the unwrapping of corporate ownership structures using live corporate registry data, live data. And for the analyst, that means you can calculate UBOs according to a definable percentage, 10%, 20%, 25%, whatever you want. You can generate an interactive ownership tree, spot risk flags for further analysis. And there you go. Those additional risks will be presented to you as well. Now, some of you may be thinking, that sounds pretty similar to our existing process, how we manually do things. And you'd be right. But here's the difference. The best thing about UBO Verify is it works in seconds. Not hours, seconds. To show you how UBO Verify works, I want to take you through some of the technical challenges we faced when building it and how our development team addressed these. And we'll start with the most basic. What can we use to determine the shareholders of a company, that onboarding process? We know there's not enough data at the beneficial ownership registers to build out that full structure. We weren't really interested in using commercial vendors, only primary source data from the registries. The solution for us was to use shareholder declarations extracted directly from the registry as data or out of PDF filings. So in the case of Companies House, you're required to file shareholders in your statement of capital, but it's buried in a PDF document. So there's our first technology, our first smart technology we used, data extraction. If we can find the shareholders at one layer, then we can build up the structure layer by layer until we get to the UBOs. But that presents another challenge. When shareholders are themselves companies, how can we match them to other registered businesses, especially across country borders? The thing about shareholder data, to get very nerdy for a second, is that it has very few identifiers. Again, let's just take Companies House in the UK. In your statement of capital, you're only required to file the names of your shareholders and their share count. That's it. How do we know what country they're based in? Well, we thought, hey, if we could search that name against a global index, a database of registry data, we could generate a list of possible matches. And then we could make some kind of sensible determination about which is the right entity. So that's what we did. We built our own matching algorithm to match shareholder data to lists of registered entities. And that's our second technology, a matching algorithm. Now, that wasn't easy by any stretch. So what you're seeing here is a pretty high-level view of what's quite a complicated algorithm to do that job. If you want an easier way to view the complexity, here's some of the team working on that algorithm. Lots of head-scratching going on, or maybe head in hands in a few cases. With all that technology and complexity under the surface, we knew we had to make it simple for the user. No one wants to go through searching through pages of information, data tables to find the UBOs. What is easier for humans to digest is a picture. So we're using graph visualization to draw out the ownership tree, making it really simple to pinpoint the UBOs and the risk areas. So there's our third technology. Data extraction, matching algorithm, graph visualization. At this point, you're probably just thinking, does it work? So I wanted to show you a very brief example of UBO Verify in practice. So what you're looking at here is the Kyckr portal. This is how our customers access our registry information. And we're going to start by searching the UK register for this company, a small business called Anthology Theatre Productions. What you're seeing is a live list of the results from Companies House, and that's going to allow us to select the right one and begin the verification process. And in our case, that's the entity at the top, Anthology Theatre Productions Limited. Now, there's a range of live information here we can order, lots of registry documents we can get live, but what I'm really interested in is any UBOs. So using UBO Verify, I'm going to unwrap the structure in real time. I just need to define my percentage, and we'll go for 25% in this case. Okay, so here we go. We're connecting to the registry, extracting the shareholders, matching parent companies to other registered businesses. And there we go. Isn't that great? And what was that, about 7 seconds or so? And we've got our result. No manual work whatsoever. So let's take a quick dive into this structure. And straight away we can see, because it's flagged to us, that Robert Benton is the sole UBO in this structure. And if we want to dig into this further, I can click on any of these branches in the tree and pull up full information about the companies and the individuals that's filed at the relevant corporate registry. So we can click through there. We're presented with a list of available information. Now, some of you might be thinking, looks great, but it's a pretty simple structure. What was that, about 2 or 3 layers of ownership? I challenge you, any of you, to uncover it manually in 7 seconds, but maybe that's fair. But here's the thing, it eats up big trees in seconds as well. I challenge any of us to do that one in about 7 hours, let alone 7 seconds. This is a New Zealand entity, multiple layers of ownership that spans across the APAC region, Singaporean, Australian entities in there as well. So that's UBO Verify, that's what we were able to build. We've launched the product this week for our enterprise customers, but we've already run about 5 proofs of concept with some of our larger enterprise clients, so I can already share with you some of the results that we're seeing. And to start with, it's uncovering 99% of ownership structures in about 10 seconds or less. Massive time saving. In fact, we're seeing approximately a 95% reduction in case handling time when it comes to that part of the process. Obviously, there's other parts. We intend to automate those as well, but for this one, we've resulted in a massive reduction in time. And as we've already seen in banks and those that have complex discovery cases, that can translate to up to 30 hours saved in some cases. Now, we didn't set any specific target metrics when we embarked upon this project. With this type of innovation, it can be difficult to know what's achievable, but we're really proud of that result and the impact it could have on the industry. So to finish up, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'd just like to circle back now to where we started and look at some of the things that made this a successful innovation project and what it means for other projects that you might be embarking on. We talked at the start about having a very clear and achievable objective. Now, in our case, we knew from the jump that identifying UBOs in every single case just wasn't going to be possible. Some countries don't provide the shareholder data to do so, and opaque arrangements like trusts, nominee shareholding would mean there are sometimes cases where the analyst will inevitably need to go back to the customer for more information. But here's the thing, that wasn't our goal. Our goal was to take all of the work that could be done manually at the moment, that was automatable, and reduce that down. And that ties quite nicely into one of the themes of this event, which is the convergence between humans and technology. I don't envisage a world, certainly anytime soon, where we've removed the human out of that equation, but what we can do is make them much more productive, efficient, and better at detecting and preventing financial crime. Secondly, high-quality data. Now, in our case, that was baked in, given we only chose to use live registry data from Kyckr's network. But for any project of this nature in AML, it's imperative you're working with a clean input. We're all familiar with the phrase garbage in, garbage out. So take the time to analyze the data you're using in these technologies. Think about governance, processing, storage before you start out. And finally, we deployed the right technologies in a smart way. Extraction, matching algorithm, graph visualization. Now, you'll notice, despite having referred to it in my last point, and it being the word on everybody's lips at the moment, I haven't mentioned AI. We do see ways for AI and machine learning to make this product even better in future. I'll talk about a couple in a second. But it wasn't necessary in the first version to achieve the results we were looking for. So smart deployment of the right technologies. Picking the right technologies can mean you get to market, you get to deployment quicker, you start realizing results earlier. So what's next for UBO Verify and the Kyckr team? Well, more jurisdictions is a no-brainer. We're at about 14 jurisdictions at the moment where we can support this recursion, and we want to expand that out. And as ownership data becomes more open, there is a growing move towards open ownership, we'll be expanding the countries where it's possible to do this cross-border discovery. We'll also be improving our risk detection engine, using AI to help detect anomalies and criminal networks in registry data, spot country risk, highlight areas for further investigation. Now, Companies House is a really interesting example here. And obviously, we're all hoping that the verification will improve as a result of the Economic Crime Act. But there's so many examples, and if any of you follow Graham Barrow on Twitter, you'll have seen these every single day of criminal networks being set up under false registrations. So there are ways we're working on to actually help detect that and build that into this graph visualization. And lastly, we're also looking at embedding PEP sanctions adverse media screening as well. If we return to Kyckr's vision, what we want to give you is that clear view at once of all of the relevant risks at onboarding. Our ultimate goal is to keep innovating to reduce risk and play our part in eliminating financial crime. When an estimated 3 to 5% of the world's GDP is laundered annually, both Kyckr and the sector have got a long way to go. However, if we can play just a small part in reducing that number, we might start the day scratching our heads, looking a bit like this, but we'll finish every day like that, with smiles on our faces. Thank you.